promotional purposes. So we are recording and also for harvesting the insights. We want to be able to document all the great work we do in these calls. And we are recording, and welcome everyone. I'm Edwin Rutch, Director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and this is our second Interfaith Cafe. I'm going to turn it over to Leo, who's going to give a little bit of an overview of what we're doing.
Thanks, Edwin. Interfaith is a very broad concept, and we met once before on this theme and had one participant was a avowed agnostic and yet felt very comfortable sharing some of her spiritual journey. So the assumption is we all have at the core a hunger for meaning and belonging and connection with other people. And some people see that as a matter of faith, a matter of spiritual consequence. So all are welcome here. And we hope to provide a safe space to talk about our spiritual journeys and how in particular we might address the question of divisions in our society, whether they be political or religious, economic, social. What might we contribute as individuals, or if we're associated with others, how we can create a civil civic society, because sometimes we're not very civil, or it appears that way. So hopefully this will be a safe space for everyone to say whatever's on your mind and heart and to be fully heard in the process of the empathy circle.
Okay, thanks, Leo. So next, Dwayne will just introduce himself, and then call in each of us for doing our name, location, and why we're interested. Take it away, Dwayne.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. Mike, would you like to get us started today?
Okay. I'm Mike Zonta, and I'm from San Francisco. I'm interested in empathy circle idea and practice. I have been, I think maybe this is my fourth, and I want to go through the training to be a facilitator. I'm not so interested in the idea of the division between religion. I don't know. I don't know. Well, I don't know about that, but I am interested in the process.
Thank you, Mike. Linda, would you like to go next? Yes.
Linda Bass, I'm from North Texas. I'm interested in the empathy circle process, just for the process itself. And I like having intellectual conversations with people of different opinions without getting into an argument. So.
You want milk?
Thank you, Linda. Linda, the other Linda, would you like to go next? Oh, you're muted.
When there was more than one Linda in my grammar school classes, they called me Linda with a Y. So if that makes it easier for you, Linda with a Y works.
Okay.
I'm Linda. I'm from Stockton, California, and it's sort of interesting. Why am I here? It sounded interesting. I was curious. I've started to find there's more stuff on Zoom and stuff now that I've retired. It took me 5 years to figure out the Zoom thing, but I'm just like really curious about what people are thinking and how they talk to each other. And just, I think I want to learn stuff. I want to know what makes people people.
Thank you, Linda. Sky, would you like to go next?
Sure. My name is Sky with a Y, W-H-Y. And I just love empathy. I believe empathy is God. we get as close to God as it gets when we're being empathic, in my experience anyway. And I love talking to people who look inward, because there aren't that many people who look inward in my experience. I mean, my experience is, albeit limited to only, I mean, barely 3/4 of a century. I mean, come on, that's not very long. So I'm really looking forward to talking to people who are actually looking inward and not adversarial at the same time. Wow. That's quite an achievement, in my opinion. So thank you for letting me in the group.
Thank you. And Leo's brother, would you like to go next?
Sure. I'm Paul, the youngest sibling in the Jacoby family. I live in Redondo Beach, California. I'm very interested in the topic of empathy. I'm involved in a lot of kind of outreach groups. We have a very active Matthew 25 group, and in Southern California, there's a great number of homeless individuals or people experiencing homelessness. And both my wife and I are involved in different groups that try to address that to some extent. The problem is so large that you can only do it on a small scale, but that's where you really interface with other people. You have the opportunity to talk to them and make those kind of connections. I think contemplation, I agree with, is very important, because that's at least how I try to motivate myself from thought into action. And a lot of times it's just a matter of being present to other people. The technology that we now have, we can be face-to-face electronically, but still that's a connection. We get to see each other and talk to each other, exchange ideas. And I'm finding more and more that the curiosity or interests, care and concern that we have for others is really an act of love. And ultimately, I think that's the direction that we all should be headed in. So I think this is a great forum to explore those ideas more.
You, Paul. Sally, would you like to go next?
Hi, hope you don't mind about the video. Yeah, I'm from Central Valley, on towards Yosemite National Park, and well, I didn't go to the last one of these. I've been through 3 of the facilitator training. Never got a certification, not too worried or concerned, but anyway, I just want to see people being able to not talk in fear and not be judged by what they say, which I think is pretty much what God sets forth for us.
Thank you, Sally. Larry, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thank you, Dwayne. So I'm Larry in Florida, and I'm a retired occupational therapist, and I find a natural curiosity or interest in something that we call by the word empathy. I find that it's our natural way of being. And I think that it's been overlooked throughout human history. And it might just be the missing link to humans being able to live peacefully with one another without thinking that dropping bombs on one another is the right thing to do. So that, I guess, ties in with the conversation of interfaith and humans looking within to discover that the nature that's already within is kind of what we manifest outside. And looking forward to our conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Leo, would you like to go next?
Thank you, Dwayne. I live in central Wisconsin, Stevens Point. Participated in a number of empathy circles with Edwin. And I think churches especially have a responsibility to engage their own membership, as well as reaching out to others. So the empathy circle process, I think, is very compatible with the goals and mission of a church. And the Catholic churches have been involved in what we call a synod, which has been a process of listening sessions, but we have not used the structured program that Empathy Circle offers. So hopefully this can be a follow-up and make more churches know about the Empathy Circle process that they can use in their own, again, with their own members, as well as reaching out to others.
Thank you. Edwin, would you like?
Okay,
to
yeah,
go next?
Edwin Rutch, San Francisco Bay Area. And for the past 14 years, I've been dedicating my life to creating more empathy, raising the level of empathy in society, because I think it's this one core foundational value that really affects, just our general well-being personally in society. And this empathy circle practice I see as a sort of a foundational practice that is sort of the most basic functional practice for getting people to really hear and listen to each other and hear each other deeply. And with this foundation, we can build all kinds of other practices on top of it. So I see it as just being very important to build raise the level of empathy in society and build that culture of empathy. So that's it. Thanks, Dwayne.
Thank you. And my name is Dwayne Hearn. I live in Las Vegas, Nevada. And my interest for being here is I'm a part of the empathy movement. And I enjoy being involved in conversations, learning from people, because there's always an opportunity for me to learn and grow whenever I engage in a conversation with someone. My approach to interfaith conversation is a little bit different. My belief is that we all have a connection based on the fact that we come from the same human family. So I don't think of things in terms of us being divided. I think that it's challenging sometimes for us to recognize we have a connection. And so I want to explore ways of seeing how we can connect with each other. And now I think I'll turn it back over to you, Edwin.
Okay, so I just wanted to just review how the dialogue process that we're using, the empathy circle process. It's based on active listening, which many of you are familiar with. I don't know, Paul and Linda Jones, are you familiar with the practice? I don't know how much to explain.
In general, but
okay, I'll give a short recap. I know that everyone else here is familiar with the practice, but in this practice, one person will be the speaker. And there's also a PDF, actually. I put the PDF in there that you can always refer to. And I'm going to put the topic in. Our topic is how might we bridge the social, religious, and political divides in the community? And you can always talk about whatever is alive for you, meaning what's on your mind in the moment. And we're going to have 4-minute turns. And we're going to go into 2 breakout rooms. And one person will be the speaker. They will select who they're going to listen to. The first listener will be the facilitator, and you can speak on the topic or whatever's on your mind. And you want to share an idea or two, which is going to be about 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and then give a pause and let your listener reflect back their understanding of what you said. And you kind of check, did they really understand what I said? If they didn't, you can say it again, maybe in different words. If they did understand it, you can continue sharing. And you keep doing that, saying a bit more, pausing, getting a reflection, and for the time allotted. And the facilitator will hold up a sign or something to say when your time is up. At that point, you just want to wrap up in a sentence or so what you were saying, get your final reflection. And then at that point, the listener becomes the speaker and they'll select someone to speak. So as a new listener, you select someone and then you share your thoughts, whatever's on your mind, and you get you pause, get a reflection. And we go around for that for the time allotted. And we're going to go about an hour and 10 minutes, and then we're going to come back into the full group and debrief. At that point, I have to leave. I can't stay for the last 15, 20 minutes. So I'll be bowing out, and Leo will be taking over at that point. So that's the essence. The best way is just to get into the circles and observe it. If, for Paul or Linda Jones, if you can be one of you could perhaps be the first speaker or be one of the participants like towards the end, so you can observe others kind of doing the process. So that kind of helps just to see how everybody's doing it, and so you kind of learn that way. So that being said, I think we're ready to go into the circles. We're going to do 2 circles. And the question, I'll post it in again. We have someone that joined us. And I'm going to post the question again. And at this point, once we go into the circles, we're not going to let anyone else new into it, because it kind of disrupts the circle. So with that, here we go into our circles. Oh, and Linda, would you be willing to facilitate? Dwayne is facilitating, and Linda, you will stay in the main room, and if you would facilitate. So are we all good, Dwayne? Yep. Okay, great. So we got an hour and 10 minutes for this part, and here we go.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, there should be 5 of us here. Sky should be moving shortly.
Is she there? Okay.
Oh,
Is she there?
no, the person dropped out. Whoever that person was dropped out.
Who's Sky?
Sky moved to room 2, so I think we're all set now. Leo is here.
Okay.
Lost Leo for a second there.
Okay, as the facilitator, when your 4 minutes, I don't have my deal. When your 4 minutes is up.
Yeah.
I'll mute them. Yeah.
Let me get I'll hold up just this card. You don't need to see it. It's just a card. And like Edwin had explained, okay, the movement is kind of throwing me off. As Edwin has explained, you don't need to stop in mid-sentence. You can finish your thought, and then the listener will have an opportunity to reflect or what you said. So are we ready, Edwin? I'm seeing Paul.
Yeah, somebody new came in. So there were, yeah, so we can start.
Okay, so I will be the first listener. And the question is, how might we bridge social, religious, and political divides in our community? or you can share whatever is alive with you. So let me get my timer going here. And Leo, would you be the first speaker and I will listen? Start. Leo.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds good. And welcome to CEO, Make a Child Smile, whoever you are. Hopefully you'll catch on to what we're doing. My brother made a remark about small scale. When you're with people, you get to talk to them in person, and that sometimes that's more effective, to be present to each other.
Okay. You said hello to CEO, make a change. I think that's make a see. And you referenced what your brother said earlier about small changes, and you think it happens was more effective when we can meet.
I get a lot of my ideas about division in society from the news reports. I think they have a vested interest in having adversity being the main headline.
Okay. You believe the news, they benefit from diversity as their headline, and that's where you get a lot of your news.
And diversity not as simply in a celebrative way, but diversity in an adversarial way. If there's an opinion, that they look for an opposite opinion, even if it's not of equal weight.
So you're talking about diversity in terms of opinions, adversarial diversity. And the news media looks for that, and sometimes even though it's not equal.
There's a tendency to think in black and white terms rather than color terms, where there's a rainbow of diversity, but our puny minds sometimes limit it to opinion A versus opinion B, and we forget about the rest of the alphabet.
Okay, so there is, in your opinion, of what you're saying is that there's a diversity of opinions like the rainbow, but because of the limited ability of our minds, we tend to think in black and white.
So here we are with 6 diverse minds and hearts, and yet we're in search of some common ground and things that we have in common.
Okay. With the six people here, we're in search of common ground, something that we have in common that will bring us together.
And I think I'm done, Linda. I don't know how much time's left, but
Okay.
I feel fully heard, and we'll pass it
All right.
on to you as speaker,
All right, stop.
and you choose someone to listen.
Yes.
Or no, wait, how's it go? I become.
No, you were the speaker. I'm the listener. So now
you become the speaker.
yes. And I pick someone to listen to me. And CEO, Make a Child Smile. If you could show yourself, that would be great. So I'll go with Mike.
Okay.
And how can we bridge the religious and political divides in our community and social as well? I'm gonna go with the religious part, because I believe up until recently, and I don't know what recently is, I guess it's subjective, we were really in America divided when it came to religion and going to church.
Okay, you're gonna, among the topics, your political, social, and religious, you're gonna go with religious because you think that up until recently, and now my mind's going blank.
Up until recently, we were really divided in terms of our religion or going to church.
Okay, so we were recently divided in terms of religion or going to church up until recently.
Yes, and I should say, go into our religious sanctuaries because everybody has a different church, mosque, whatever. It, we work together, we live together in the same communities or whatever, but when our religious day comes, which for many of us is Sunday, we go to our, I'll just say churches, but you know what I mean, your religious sanctuary, and it's black and white. The Black people go to a predominantly Black church, white people go to a predominantly white church, and and then we go in and we listen to the word of God, and then we come back out. But when we're in there, we're divided.
Yeah. So when we all go to our different churches or synagogues or whatever, and usually for many of us that's on a Sunday, but mostly that's divided. Going to church is divided by race. Black
Yeah,
people going to a Black church, white people going to a white church.
yeah,
And I think that's all I got.
yeah. And so I believe that we can start bridging that divide in our churches, in our synagogues or religious sanctuaries. I know some people that have tried to do that in their churches, and they found it difficult.
Okay, you think that we can try to bridge that divide? Some people that have tried to do that, but have found it difficult.
Yes. I currently go to a non-denominational church, and I tell my friends it's the first church I've ever been to that was truly diverse.
Okay, so you're currently going to a non-denominational church, and you tell your friends that this is the first church you've gone to that is really, truly diverse.
Yes, I look around and it's different ages, different ethnic groups, different races. It's men, women. It's truly a mix of people. And the minister is actually a woman.
Okay, you look around and you see all kinds of different people, men, women, different races, and it's a truly diverse church, and the minister is a woman.
Yes, and sometimes I come out wishing that that's the way the world was, but of course it's not, but it's a start.
So you come out wishing that, come out of church wishing that's the way the world was, but it may not be that way, but it is a start.
Yes, thank you. I feel fully heard, Mike. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll go with Paul. Can you listen? I think you're muted,
You're
Paul.
muted.
There you go, unmute, and I
Okay.
will see how I am as a listener.
Yeah, that reminds me of what somebody said. I don't know if it was Martin Luther King or somebody that said that the most segregated hour of the week is on Sunday at 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
But I'm more interested in the political divisions that seem to be paramount in this country. I'll stop. I'll pause there.
Okay, so I'm hearing that of the different ways that we can look at this. You're moving from a religious way in which we often are divided because we go to what's familiar and would like to focus more on the political divisions, that we have.
Yeah, I think to me that's in my life anyhow, it's more paramount and more concerning the divide between the right and the left, and all the other, mostly between the right and the left, just seems insurmountable, and something that I wish one day we would do an empathy circle with, people from the right and left talking to each other.
So do I hear you feel that the gap, the division is even greater or greatest in political different camps, even more so than, religious differences that we might have, that is because it's a bigger gap, it's even more concerning to you?
Right. And something that I wish at some point we could do an empathy circle, because I think that I don't really believe it. I think at the bottom of it, a lot of it is either misinformed voters or disinformed voters, or people who are making a tribal statement or some kind of statement that's not immediately obvious, but with exploration could be detected and heard through an empathy circle.
So what I'm hearing you say is that there may be techniques or something which are being employed, on either side of the division, that such as misinformation, that is exasperating or making that gap, the division among us, even greater, that there's something maybe that everyone is not aware of, but that is causing that division, that it's to me, I get the sense of the disinformation, that it's kind of corrupting forces that is making it more difficult for us to be united or feel connected to each other. Is that accurate?
Right. And I have some friends who are right wing, and we don't talk politics. I because we can't really, because it immediately cuts off when we start talking politics. And so, but I think there's, I think there's a psychological reason, okay, for that people are on the right, or a psychological reason for that people are on the left. And I think I would love to be able to get to those reasons, and then I'll end there.
Okay, that the divisions are so great that you just can't communicate at all, and therefore, it's almost like you give up. But there must be some psychological reasons, some underlying motivations that put us in one camp or the other. Again, it's almost like something which is hidden from us in a way that is driving us to be separate instead of being connected or closer together.
Yes, I think that's good, and I feel heard. Thank you.
Okay. And if I understand the process, I would now
you become the speaker, and you pick someone to listen.
Okay. So I'll ask Edwin to be the listener. I'll be the speaker.
Listening.
It's good to, try to absorb, what I'm hearing from others and try to incorporate that in terms of my own experiences. I agree a lot with Mike in terms of, kind of underlying forces that drive us apart, that are in a way that are manipulative, that really, especially in the political realm, which I think, when you talk about the goal of politics is basically to get people to make a decision or a course of action. in one way or another. And
I
so,
reflect that back, what I'm hearing so far.
okay.
So you've been listening to everyone, you're wanting to respond to what you heard, and you're sort of resonating with what Mike is saying, and especially in the political realm, that there's not it's people are trying to have people make a decision, so maybe there's some competition there, and maybe that's sort of a block to getting along.
Yes, that it's because it's focused on a particular action. You want to get someone to vote for this candidate. That drives one's selection of information to be somewhat biased in a way, that you will emphasize something which you think the person you're talking to would be receptive to, and you'll leave out. And so in a way, politics at the nature of it is a little bit disingenuous, because it's so geared towards a specific outcome, that you try to drive the other person towards that outcome by the information that you choose to share. And
I
so
reflect that back. What I'm hearing is that you're seeing politics as people are trying to get them to vote. People are trying to get an outcome, trying to vote. They want you to vote for them. And then you're sort of manipulating information to get that outcome. It's not sort of an emergent, open discussion. And that's already makes it sort of disingenuous, sort of a dishonest. It's not truthful or something.
Yeah, that is, politics can be kind of a shortcut, for you to achieve an outcome. And so you disregard maybe the more important thing is what unites us, what brings us together, what do we have in common. So I just think and because of that, I think, I certainly feel that's where the greatest amount of attention is. There may be lots of reasons why I want to vote a particular way or but I am frustrated by efforts to circumvent, real communication. It is just driven by, I want you in this camp, or to make a specific decision.
Yeah, so you're feeling some frustration about, the way politics is structured. You're in one camp or the other, and just make this decision, and feeling some frustration, seeing that as there's a problem there with really kind of bridging the divides, maybe structurally.
Yeah. And that's, I feel listened to in terms of your summary of that sense that I have.
Okay, that was the time too. So, okay, then I'll speak to CEO. Are you there? I've been connecting with you. I can speak to you. And so, oh, great. Yeah. So welcome. I know you're in Uganda and a minister too. So we're talking about how do we bridge the divides, the social political divides. And in the churches, I think something that's missing from churches is this empathy circle process. I think a lot of churches could really use this practice.
Yeah, I think, like you said, that churches are missing a point. In my opinion, I think...
instead of your opinion, just reflecting back, you're only reflecting what you hear me say. So if you just say what you heard me say, that would be the first step.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
I was saying that the church needs everybody in the church, regardless of who you are, regardless of what you believe, as long as you're in the church, and as long as you can welcome everybody inside there. Because as a church, we don't need only those who believe in what we need or what we want, but everybody needs to be around.
Yeah, there's that part, but the part I think is missing is some tools for dialogue. And that's what we're doing here, is using the empathy circle as a tool. And I think there's a need for these tools in the churches. So
Yeah, I think like
no,
in Africa.
no, if you're not, you didn't see the
Okay.
instructions for how this works. So I'm just trying to share with you. So all you're trying to do is reflect back what you heard me say. So not so much share what you think, but what did you hear me say?
Okay, as the
Okay.
facilitator, let me, CEO, this is a process. And so each person has an opportunity to speak 4 minutes. And the listener reflects or repeats back to the speaker what they heard, whether they agree with it or not, without judgment, opinion, or commentary or whatever. So everybody has a turn. So when it's your turn, you will speak in short bullets, short pauses, and whoever the listener is will repeat or reflect back to you what you said. So it's all about being heard. So Edwin right now is speaking to you. You are to reflect or repeat back to him what you heard him say. It's, you have to listen and he has to speak. It's all about Edwin being heard at this time.
Okay.
Got
Got
it?
it.
Okay.
Okay,
All
thank
right.
you. Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah. So so the main thing is that I think that these relationship processes, like the empathy circle here, could be beneficial in all the different religious organizations.
Yeah, you say that you know, they
Did he go away? Are you there? CEO.
He's muted.
You're muted.
Yeah, you're muted.
You're on mute. Oh, I lost him. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, he came in late, so I think he didn't quite understand what the process was. And somebody let him in, and I had asked that we don't let new people in because they're not familiar with the process. Plus, he's in Uganda, which has a really bad connection problems. That might have been it. So yeah, I'll speak to Linda then, just to finish that thought of the just the need for this process. I think could be really helpful in churches or any kind of religious institution. So you're saying that this whole process, this empathic listening or empathy circle, is a process that could benefit the churches? Yeah, I went to a Baptist church in Sacramento when I grew up, and it was kind of alienating. I didn't really connect with the church there. So that was kind of my experience of, I think something like this where you actually sit down and, talk with people and get heard would have been really helpful. So you're reflecting back to a church you went to, a Baptist church you went to in California, and you didn't feel connected there. And you, again, feel like if you were able to sit down and talk to individuals and be heard and be listened to, it would have made a difference. Yeah, and somebody was talking about, you don't talk about politics because it kind of blows up. But if you can bring people into an empathy circle, it actually, it actually helps with talking about politics, I find. And yeah, someone referenced that the fact that they shy away from talking about politics because it ends up being adversarial. And you feel like this process is a good way to talk about politics without it being an adversarial situation. Yeah, I feel fully heard. Thanks. Okay. Okay. I was giving you more time, but okay. So, I'm good, thanks. All right. Where is Paul? Yeah, Paul. I want to go. Okay, now we got somebody else. Heather. Okay.
Nope, Heather's gone.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I'm removing people because as I had mentioned, we don't let people in once the circle is going. Somebody's letting people in. Don't let anybody in. Okay. I want to go back to what you were saying about politics and the manipulation of information, which I strongly agree with. And my opinion is that we have mixed politics and our religious beliefs. We've twisted them together like a pretzel, and it's hard to talk about one without the other.
So what I'm hearing you say is because we're mixing two different ways of I guess being
Religion and
together, that it has a bad effect on maybe what would be a truer way for that group to act. So it because they're twisted together, it really harms the purpose or how it should, what we should be finding by that method, of either a religious or political
Yes.
thing.
I was, before I came on, I was reading something on one of the social media platforms, but we're having a runoff election coming up in Texas. And there are some openings on the school board. So this person had posted his opinion of a good candidate for the school board because of her Christian beliefs. And the responses were, of course, all over the place. And a lot of people were saying the school board is impartial, shouldn't be political, and we shouldn't be voting for people just because they're Christians.
So what I'm hearing you say is that by trying to take the identity of someone saying that they're Christian, using that as a way to convince people to maybe vote for that person, that it has a serious flaw to it, that it kind of violates some underlying nature of how the religious community ought to be operating.
Yes, and I could see the point of view about people objecting to voting for someone just because they have labeled themselves a Christian, because my concern is, once they're on the school board, are they basing their opinions on policy or their interpretation of Christianity?
So what I'm hearing you say is that there can be different interpretations of what it means to be Christian. And when you use that in relation to policy, you may have a resulting thing which is very different from maybe what your understanding of Christianity would be.
Yeah, because your understanding of Christianity is subjective, and you're not going to be, I don't think you won't be objective when it comes to deciding policy for the school system.
Okay, so I'm hearing you say, the objectivity and subjectivity just around the idea of what is a Christian can be very different to different people. And therefore, it's not really proper to use a label, which could have very different meanings then to different people.
True. Yes. Thank you. I feel fully heard.
Okay. Okay, and let's see, I guess I would become now the speaker, and I would pick Mike. Why don't I pick you to be the listener?
Okay.
And the idea of having labels, that can have very different meanings, it resonates with me too. In terms of something that leads to a division instead of bringing us closer together.
Okay, let him repeat. Let him.
So the idea of labels is something that resonates with you because it's something that can not bring people together, but be divisive, I guess.
Yeah, I think labels are sometimes used as if we agree with what the label means. And I think the labels, is a type of a shortcut, which can have very many different meanings. And so we don't really, it's a false way of communicating.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that's, so you think that a label is that we don't really know what they mean, or we don't really think about what they mean, but we just, that labels are a false way of communicating because, well, I'm not quite sure, but is that right?
Yeah, that to me, it's using a label is a lazy form of communication, because the label means something to me, but that same label can mean something very different to someone else. And so it's a form of a shortcut type of communication where you assume that when I use this label that you're going to have the same identification to that label as I do.
Okay. So a label, may mean something to you, or that may be something different to somebody else. So it's a lazy way of communicating because you may not have the same definition of label as somebody else.
Yeah, that it's a lot more complicated than that. So you can't take the shortcut of just labeling someone as a Christian, and therefore, you should trust that person, because the idea of what a Christian is can be very different, between two different people. And so you really need to get below just the word, the idea of a Christian, when some people will use it in a way that is meant to really just bring them to your side, that we should all agree that Christians are great and wonderful.
Okay, so for example, using the word Christian, for some people that may just mean that you're great and wonderful, but we need to get away from using terms like Christian to describe people, because it's not an accurate way or a effective way of communicating what you're trying to communicate.
I think.
And your time is up. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you. No, I felt hard.
All right, Mike.
Boy, it's so amazing that while you're talking, I can understand things beautifully, and then as soon as I try to feed it back, it goes through all kinds of stuff in my head.
Yeah. Okay. Now you get to pick.
Oh, sorry,
yeah. And Leo hadn't been selected in a while.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Leo, if you could listen.
Be happy to, Mike.
Yeah, the idea of Christian has a lot of different meanings to a lot of different people. So for some people, it does mean somebody good. For other people, it means somebody kind of rigid and somebody kind of fundamental and fundamentalist, and kind of somebody to be wary of.
So two meanings of Christian might be automatically that's a good person, or oh, I got to be careful around this person who calls himself Christian.
Right. Right. And I guess the same could be applied to Republican or Democrat or Trump supporter or whatever. For some people, that's very, very good. And for some people to say, you're, well, let's see, they just had elections in France and Macron beat Marie Le Pen. And she was supposed to be like the Trump of France. But I felt relieved. But it's just that competition is something that really worries me, and because it's not going away just because Macron won, and it'll be back. It'll rear its to me, it'll rear its ugly head again. So I'll give you a chance to.
So political labels have the same effect. Whatever political label we use can have even opposite meanings for people, opposite reactions. And you gave the example in France of a candidate like Trump lost to the current president. Thanks for the update, by the way. I was waiting to hear that outcome. But that concerns you, that kind of Trumpism that we've experienced in our country. We see it in France also. That concerns you on a global scale.
Right, because I think there's a lack of, well, empathy for one thing, certainly, but a lack of communication, because the people that are Trump supporters are not being heard. They definitely do not feel heard, and it seems like that's a real crisis of empathy.
So a crisis of empathy that you see is that people in some camps don't feel heard, and they're angry or they're upset about it, or they're not going to go away.
Right. So that leaves the rest of us with the choice of not a real choice of doing something creative for the country or the government, but just trying to keep this the mob at bay, and that's as much as we can hope for, it seems.
So a lot of our energy isn't going to creative solutions, but just fending off the antagonistic oppositions in our political system.
Right. Yeah, I think I think that's all I have to say.
All right, that's great.
Okay, I'll ask Linda, will you be my listener?
Sure.
As Mike was talking earlier, I wonder if the division is between the people that in one camp are open to other opinions and the people in the second camp are closed.
So you're wondering, you're referring back to what Mike was talking about, and so you're wondering if one camp is open to hearing and the other camp is closed.
How do you do a dialogue if that's the case?
Yeah, how can you talk? How can you dialogue with someone that when one is open and the other one is not?
Of course, I always put myself in the open camp.
Okay.
But
And
maybe
Leo,
I'm in the closed camp because I don't want to listen to the Trumpers.
Okay, so you put yourself in the open camp, but when it comes to Trumpers, you may be in the closed camp because you don't want to hear it.
That's right. Linda, as you were talking, I thought you talked about the segregation of churches. When our son moved to Washington, D.C., he said he felt so welcome at the church that he checked out. He went to explore a new church, and he said, "Oh, I felt so welcomed," and people came up to me and asked where I was from, and so we asked him, "Well, what kind of church was that?" Well, it was a Catholic church, but I was the only other white person in the church. The minister was white, and I was white, so I kind of stood out.
Okay, so you're telling us the story about when your son moved to Washington and he was checking out churches and he found one where he felt really welcome. And you asked him what kind of church. He said Catholic. And, he went on to describe it as it being predominantly Black or whatever, because the minister the priest was white and he was white, so he stood out.
That's right. And I mentioned last time we met, I'm having a great time with 4 or 5 Baptists in New Jersey. We're talking about prison ministry. And I just haven't had that experience with people of color in my own upbringing, and where I live in Wisconsin, it's rare. So it's a treat for me to mingle with these Black Baptists in New Jersey, and our social justice interests are very much in common.
Okay, so you're involved with some other pastors or ministers. It's 4 or 5 of them, and you're involved in, your focus is prison ministry. And your background has not, this is new because your background has not involved other people of color, but this is, you're finding some commonalities in this group.
Yes. I loved your analogy that we turn ourselves in, we get into a pretzel when we have these divisions. We turn ourselves into a pretzel. So I think your analogy was really good, Linda.
So you agree with my analogy that we turn ourselves into pretzels when we, get all mixed up.
Right.
Labels.
Of course, the pretzel is supposed to be a form of bread in the form of a person praying. So it's the opposite of the common meaning of pretzel. Even pretzel is a label that has different meanings.
So the irony is the pretzel is supposed to signify prayer or whatever, but we even get that twisted.
I also wanted to mention, you've been talking with your focus on churches, Linda, that the big category in sociology now are the nones, N-O-N-E-S. When they check their religious affiliation, they say none of the above. And so that's also a phenomena happening in our country. How do we talk to folks who do not feel affiliated with any congregation?
Yeah, and so you're noticing in our society now that they check the block of none, N-O-N-E, whether they're not affiliated or they're not affiliated with any religious group. And so your question is, how do we communicate with those that don't identify with any group, religious group?
Thank you, Linda. I feel fully heard.
Okay. So I want to go back to Leo, if you would hear me.
All right.
I'm you kind of touched on it because I was listening to Paul, and we talk about labels, and I'm just wondering where we would be politically if people couldn't use religious labels to identify themselves.
So you're trying to think in the realm of politics if we avoided religious labels altogether?
Yes. If a person running for office had to identify themselves without labeling themselves in one religious category or the other, wonder what they would say, how they would identify themselves.
So you're wondering how would people identify themselves if they could not use or chose not to use a religious label that is ambiguous?
Yeah. And but at the same time, you said that people are checking the block of none, and so they're not identifying with any religious group. So your question, how do we communicate with them? I think is interesting.
So that raises a new question for you in terms of the none category and how we communicate with people that don't use a religious label. None of the above is their label.
Yeah. And I guess I'm thinking maybe that's the way our brains work. We compartmentalize. We have to put everything and everybody into a box and slap a label on it in order to process them or their ideologies.
So there may be a tendency on all of our part to compartmentalize people, put them into a box. It might even come from a first impression, I suppose. But
we do the labeling ourselves when we attend to somebody else. That goes on in our heads.
Yeah, and it can be dangerous, and as Paul said, it can be a lazy way of communicating. I pay attention to politics in my area, and a few years ago, this gentleman was running for, I think it was school board or some political office, and he, said, "I'm a Muslim." Well, everybody would, "Oh, he's gonna, invoke the Sharia law and, try to make everybody a Muslim." And then you have a person that says, "Well, I'm a Christian," and then, "Oh, they're conservative and they're gonna be against the critical race theory, and they're going to want to burn books, and if you don't believe in Jesus Christ, then you're going to be ostracized." So labeling can be weird.
So labeling, and we do it inside our heads. We're not even if we're not given a label, we'll invent one, and it could be dangerous or a lazy way of communicating. And you gave a couple examples of when somebody says Christian, others might think fundamentalists. And if you say Islam, you think they're terrorists. So we put people in boxes mentally, and it has consequences.
Yes. I was also listening to someone today, this person that had identified himself as a researcher and an independent thinker and all like this. And he was talking about his research into CRT, critical race theory. And he twisted that like a real good pretzel. And I didn't want to listen, but I forced myself to listen to his speech. And then I understood why people have gotten CRT twisted.
So another example of someone talking about CRT, by listening closely to this speaker, you understood how people were maybe misinformed, disinformed, and led off a path of good communication.
Yeah. Thank you. I feel fully heard.
Well, I'll ask my brother to be my listener, and I may be short-winded so that others can have a turn. But Paul, would you listen to me?
Okay.
Paul, we have a sister who's on the opposite political spectrum. So we share the same religion, but different politics.
So I hear you talking about a sister, a familial relationship, but there's a division, even in what one would think would bring us close together.
Right. So you and I know what we're talking about. I think others do too. I had an experience on the phone today. Somebody said he was a researcher and wanted, if I had time, to listen to his questions.
So you were contacted by a researcher, and he was asking you to listen to
So he asked my age. He asked my political preference, if I'm a voter. And then he asked me, he started a whole list of positive things about the person I will not vote for.
So he was actually putting out labels or categorizing, from his questions, in terms of where you might fit. And then after getting that information, was trying to feed you with positive attributes towards or about a specific person.
There's a technique in campaigning called push and pull, and he was doing a lot of pushing and pulling.
So you felt that in a way this communication was manipulative, that it was really not designed to communicate so much as to be persuasive towards you in the techniques that were being employed.
Right. It didn't seem, so I called him on and I said, this is a very poor research instrument. Tell your managers it's too long and it's too prejudiced against one
for one particular person in a political party.
Okay, so you kind of called this person out, and you were bothered by the length and the kind of biased nature of the whole communication.
Right. So I felt good about doing that, but manipulation comes in many forms.
So sometimes when we feel that we've identified something, a technique or something, we feel good that we were able to identify what was happening and maybe call the person on it. Yet you feel that maybe you might be guilty of communication like that. I get a twinge that you don't feel 100% justified in in your response. But if you're being honest, we all are subject to different forms of manipulation.
The last thing I want to say, Paul, is that I'm thankful you're here to experience this empathy circle, and that it takes a lot of practice. I've been to about 16, 17 of these. I know Linda's a facilitator, and it just takes a lot of practice. So welcome aboard. Hope you try it again, and you are now the speaker.
I am now the speaker.
Or no, you have to feed. You had the feedback first, and then you're the speaker.
Okay. So you are happy that I am here to participate, but you understand that it's or you're letting me know that the process of empathetic listening is a technique that takes a lot of practice and work. Yet you're glad I'm here to take this first step.
Amen, brother.
Okay. Thank you also. So I would be the speaker now. And who haven't we heard from a while? Let's see.
Mike and Edwin. Yeah.
Okay, maybe going back to you, Mike. I'm trying to think of trying to pull together a lot of the communication that we had and trying to find a direction, an overarching idea of things that we've been exploring together. And some of that I relate to, the emotions that we have, that we all have, that we bring to a conversation, and ways of feeling, the whole empathetic process, it seems like, of being heard, I think is tied up with who we identify ourselves at, and part of our
pause and let him.
Okay. What have you heard me
He's
say?
frozen. Mike,
Okay. Yeah,
Mike.
looks like
What's
Mike.
that?
Are you frozen? Yeah.
Did you miss any of what I was trying to say, Mike?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I was saying that you were trying to come up with an overarching theme about what we were talking about today, and that you feel that it has something to do with our emotions.
Yeah, that it's part of what we bring to conversations. We have an emotional life, and we strongly identify with emotions seem to be more at the core of who we are as a person, and the process of being listened to in an empathetic way that we're practicing in this exercise brings us closer to that emotional core of who we are as a person.
Okay, so the emotions are at the core of who we are. And this process of empathetic listening is brings us closer to that core of who we are as a person.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of feeding back to me, the ideas, and I'm, trying to clarify. We're talking about in our original question, political or social, religious, different ways of communicating. And we tend to put ourselves into certain camps that we feel familiar with because, I think we are emotionally drawn to the familiarity, or it feels comfortable. But sometimes that can also be a limiting experience, where Leo was talking about his son going to a church where he saw a lot of differences and yet he felt welcomed. And sometimes being, especially in a new environment, you don't always, you may not be comfortable at first emotionally, but if people are open to you, that if they're welcoming, that kind of reaches beyond maybe some superficial divisions of not being the same ethnicity or race. You feel that you're recognized.
Yeah, so sometimes we tend to attract ourselves to the social, political, or religious identity that we find familiar. But as in the case of that Leo mentioned, sometimes getting out of the familiar can be very good, especially if we have a feeling of being welcomed.
Thank you. All right.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let me ask Edwin
Listening.
to listen. Boy, I agree with what Paul said about this process reaching into the core of who we are emotionally, because as I listen and as I try to listen, all kinds of feelings come up, silly feelings, egocentric feelings, all kinds of stuff. And so it's in a meditation where you can kind of notice it and dismiss it, is what I'm trying to do with this process.
Mm-hmm. So you're kind of agreeing with Paul that this process brings you to your core feelings. You're noticing that a lot of different feelings are coming up, and like with meditation, you're sort of letting those go.
Right. When especially as if it's inappropriate or some side thought that I don't need to particularly pursue at the present moment.
So it sounds like you're sort of looking at the different feelings that are coming up and just kind of letting them go, especially if they're like side thoughts and not core to what we're talking about. Or
also what Linda was saying about not only Linda but Leo as well was saying about nuns. I think that in the spiritual community that I'm involved with, a lot of people think, oh well, we're really unique. We really have this spirituality nailed down, and everybody else really doesn't understand like we do. But my feeling is that at the core of every religious experience or feeling or person is the same drive to communicate with the higher self.
So you're noticing that different religions, they see that they, or at least the one you're part of or group, that people see that they have sort of the truth, that theirs is the truth, but you're seeing that everyone has at the core this type of truth.
Right. Joe, I was listening to you so much that I forgot what I was going to say.
Yeah, losing your train of thought here by checking the reflection.
Okay. So what one person might call Jesus, another person might call my higher self, or my intuition, or all that kind of stuff. And I think that, so to me, the empathy circle is really kind of a spiritual experience, because we're trying to reach the higher self in not only ourselves, but in each other. And that is the goal of, and really, that's the goal of the religious people and the nuns, I think, as well.
So you're saying that the nuns and the religious people are trying to connect to a deeper self and a higher self, and you're seeing that what we're doing in the empathy circle is also doing that, striving for that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. And that's all I have to say.
Okay. Well, I'll speak to Paul then. Yeah, something that was sticking with me is that, you know, I'm here near Berkeley, and when Trump was elected, we had the political right come and do demonstrations, and then the political left would demonstrate, counter demonstrate. So there'd be 200 people on the left, I mean on the right, and 200 or 300 on the left, and they'd come and sort of battle it out here in Berkeley.
Okay, so you're talking about a kind of a political realm, you know, where there's a divisions between right and left coming together, but are they really communicating? You know, it seems like they're just maybe
battling it out. They were, I mean, this is like, they're not, they're beating each other up, hitting each other, you know, pounding on each other. There's like blood, you know, flowing. And we have this empathy tent that we have, and there's like, you know, 5, 6, 7 of us. We set up this empathy tent kind of next to the, you know, where the lines are drawn, and we offer listening to both sides, right? And we just say, come, we're here to listen to both sides. And if they were willing, we set them down to talk to each other in the empathy tent using the empathy circle practice.
Okay, so you're talking about the technique and experience of really trying this with people who had sharp divisions between them, to the point that they were fighting. You know, they couldn't find any other way to communicate other than through physical violence, and offering them an alternative technique of simply being listened to see what the effect that would have on.
Yeah, it you know, it worked. We never beat up anybody or got beat up. That worked. And the thing is I can't, you know, for me, it's the logical thing is like in Berkeley or in this area, why weren't 200 or 300 people coming out with us, sitting down, laying out, you know, chairs. We have chairs people can sit across, and saying, hey, to the right wing, because Berkeley is very liberal, we're here to listen to you. Sit down and we're going to listen to you. Just tell us what's on your mind. Instead, there's like 4 people, 5 people doing that. And the rest of them are out there, Antifa and everybody else, you know, ready to fight. You know, if they would have had 200 people, 300 out there to listen, the whole thing would have been diffused. And they probably would have left, everybody would have left as friends. So what is the matter with this society that it can't like do that? It's like crazy.
Yeah, so you're bothered by the fact that the numbers were so high on either end, and nothing was being accomplished. but there were a few people who knew of these techniques of listening and what a difference that could make if just more people were introduced to empathetic listening and trying to bridge the gap that's between those very wide divisions in our society.
Yeah, it's all putting listening, front and center. So, okay, whatever you got to say, I'm willing to listen, you don't have to listen to me to begin with. I'll listen first, but then eventually let's bring it into a mutual listening, like in an empathy circle. So I'm kind of like, and I think this scales through the whole society. This is like, in the religions, the political sphere, this basic dynamic is it really scales through the whole society. And I don't understand why it's not, why more people don't kind of understand that and do this. It's weird. Yeah.
Yeah. So to you, it doesn't even seem logical that people don't employ, these techniques, which would have dramatic different effects, in really reducing the vibe among us all. That it just doesn't seem logical to you that more people, don't employ this wonderful technique that's available to us.
Exactly. Yeah, I feel really heard. Thanks, Paul. So we're closing a little bit earlier this time, so I have to leave right at, we're going to go into the main room, and then I'm going to actually close the room right now. And then I'm going to, once everybody's in the main room, I'm going to turn it over to you, Leo, give you the main, make you the host. And I'm going to have to take off, and you're going to be doing the debrief, right? So that was, you go through, let me post that real quick. If I can find the question. Yeah, there's I think the rest of everybody's coming back in a minute, right? Yeah, so this will be the debrief. Oh.
I'll be right back.
So is the room about to close, Leo? Do you have the?
Yeah, do you want me to, you gave the other room a message?
Oh, there they go. Yeah, they're coming back. So. Okay, here they come back. Okay, I got to take off. Sorry to leave earlier this time. It was just a kind of a special occasion. So yeah.
Have a great
Great. Thanks everybody in my room.
Nice,
Great
nice meeting you.
conversation.